Rust Lake. Federal Number 23 Special Waste Treatment Plant. Also known as the Magic Tomb. With the continuous development of comprehension civilization, the magic weapon that used to be superior and only driven by comprehentionists has entered thousands of households and has become an indispensable tool for ordinary people to travel, study and work at home. While bringing convenience to life, it also produces a large amount of scrap magic weapons and metal garbage. Most of these trash magic weapons have a lot of spiritual power, which is easy to cause radiation pollution. The rune arrays that build magic weapons are extremely unstable, and even have the risk of explosion. If left alone, it will cause great damage to the environment. Therefore, around every major city in the Federation, there will always be a number of special waste disposal sites to deal with scrap magic weapons. The number 23 Special Waste Treatment Plant is located in the southern suburbs of Foggy City, a major federal training town. Under the dim sky, a swamp polluted into purple, exuding a strong stench, the mountain peaks made of metal fragments resemble hundreds of dinosaurs showing their backs from the swamp, and the peaks were filled with fragmented flying swords, sitting beside the flying swords. The rusty spar puppets and their empty eye sockets have already extinguished the spiritual fire, and only the Chinook-feeding bugs poked their heads out of it, carefully looking at this dangerous magic graveyard. Boom! Not far away, inside a trash mountain peak, the rune array of the abandoned magic weapon burst, and the spiritual power remaining in it instantly exploded, blasting half of the mountain into the sky. Numerous metal components scattered like flowers, scattered in all directions, and caused a series of collapses in the surrounding garbage mountains, raising smoke and dust in the sky, like a demon dancing, covering the entire sky. Here, it seems to be a forbidden zone of life, and only insignificant cockroaches and worms regard this as a paradise. But Li Yao dormant behind a mountain of garbage and licked his chapped lips. The cocky windbreaker was full of dust, making him one with the environment. Glancing at the explosive cloud rising not far away, the young boy's clear eyes did not show any emotion, and he was unhappy. It was only when the dirt and metal fragments splashed on the trash mountain where he was hiding, that he slightly shrank into the depths of the trash pile, and at the same time put on goggles enough to cover half of his face. Coming! When the Lingzi watch on his wrist vibrated lightly, the young man's spirits lifted, and a smile full of expectation appeared at the corner of his mouth. At 3 hours 52 minutes and 38 seconds in the afternoon, the daily routine garbage dumping time is also the carnival time of Li Yao's garbage bugs. The Lingzi watch worn on his left wrist was a hunting-specific model launched by the cultivating sect Fei Lingzong 3 years ago. It took him 2 months to repair it after he picked it up in the trash mountain. In addition to timing, it also has a very powerful function that can record vibrations of special frequencies, and notify the owner when a specific vibration comes nearby. This function was originally used to remind hunters that there might be powerful monsters nearby. But after Li Yao's modification, it became a reminder that the garbage boat was about to appear. After a while, with a trivial hum, more than a dozen black spots appeared on the northern horizon. At this time, the smoke and dust brought by the explosion had not dissipated, and a dozen small black dots were mixed in it, and it was not clear at all. Li Yao shrugged the tip of his nose, and touched a rune on the side of the goggles with his fingers. Hey! A blood red appeared on the surface of the goggles. Scanned by the red light, the junk boat hidden behind the smoke and dust was outlined in a round figure, clearly. The hunting function of the Lingzi watch has also firmly locked the special vibration frequency of one of the junk boats. Junk ship number 1327, it's you. From birth to 10 years old, Li Yao has stayed in the magic treasure tomb for 10 years. He knows every inch of land and every junk ship in the sky. This junk ship number 1327 is responsible for collecting floating gooses. Garbage in the Upper East Side of the city. The Upper East Side is the most luxurious and wealthy area in the city, where many cultivators live, and the magic weapons they discard are also the most valuable. Many magic weapons are even intact, just because they are slightly outdated, or a new generation of products have been launched, they have been discarded by the cultivators and the wealthy nonchalantly. For Li Yao, what kind of garbage ship is this? It is a treasure ship full of gold mines. Who? Li Yao used his feet and shot out like a projectile, rushing between the garbage mountains, rushing to the smoke and dust, and rushing to the garbage ship No. 1327. Surrounded by crumbling mountains of garbage, underneath is a gurgulo bubble-producing poisonous swamp. Li Yao is like the most agile monkey in the mountain forest. From time to time, he borrows some protruding parts on the garbage mountain, every time he pedals. It pops up tens of meters away, and the action is fluent and pleasing to the eye. Li Yao, you bastard, fighting for food with Lao Tzu again. At this moment, more than a dozen figures sprang out from behind several trash mountains, dressed like Li Yao, but they didn't wear his advanced blood-red goggles and Lingzi watches. These people are holding shovel and iron rod in their hands, and they are coming fiercely. Like Li Yao, they all rely on number 23 special garbage disposal ground to feed on garbage bugs. Where there is interest, there is struggle. The discarded magic weapon of a ship may be just for the high-ranking cultivators, but for the poor at the bottom, it is the hope of survival. Li Yao is the best magic weapon in the grave. The garbage bugs are naturally the thorn in the eyes of most garbage bugs and thorns in their flesh. Li Yao didn't care, he laughed, his waist suddenly exerted strength, his body shape was weird, and he turned 90 degrees without warning, flashed away from an obese young man with a cross brow and an angry face, and took advantage of his fat face. He stepped on a foot, and took advantage of this foot, and the whole person swept out another 30 or 40 meters. Fei Long, everyone comes out and eats together, who is faster than you, you should lose weight. There was a huge red mark on the face of the obese teenager, and his nose was almost sinking into fat. He was so angry that he screamed. The commander chased him, and the group quickly entered the smoke and dust area. There has just been an explosion here and it is extremely unstable. Dozens of garbage mountains will collapse at any time. Even the ferocious fat dragon group of teenagers can't help but slow down when they enter this place, watching Li Yaofeng swiftly slamming. The fat dragon couldn't help but sipped. This is really famous for asking for money and life, if God has eyes, a thunder strikes to death. Before the words came to an end, a garbage mountain not far away from Li Yao exploded again, tens of thousands of tons of metal components and broken magic weapons rushed down like a flash flood. Such spirit! Fat Dragon and a group of teenagers were dumbfounded, at a loss. But I heard a scream from the smoke, Xiao He, help! A black light that was deeper than the night sky shot out, dripping around in the metal torrent, and then rushed into the air, but it was a rusty flying sword with a chipped blade and a pitch-black body. The flying sword has a huge handguard that spreads like black wings. Like a drowning man, Li Yao stubbornly grasped the straw, lying awkwardly on the flying sword, surrounded by black ons, and rushed to the sky. In the sky, more than a dozen garbage boats have shown huge bodies. Each garbage boat is hundreds of meters long. Its round body is like a tortoise supporting the earth in the legend. The tortoise shell is densely engraved with engravings. 10,000 runes, auras flashing, and colorful, help these tens of thousands of tons of big guys to resist the invasion of gravity. Wow! The hatches in the abdomen of the big tortoises opened, and overwhelming metal components and broken magic weapons poured out and slammed into the ground. For a while, the spiritual power in the entire world was frantically stirred, and a stormy sea was set off. Even the garbage boat weighing tens of thousands of tons swayed from left to right in the wave of spiritual power, violently bumping, and had to be separated desperately to alleviate the interference. Fat Long and the others did not dare to approach easily, lest they be affected. Li Yao still rode a black flying sword in the wave of spiritual power, and although he was embarrassed to the extreme, he was as agile as a loach. Of course, he did not dare to confront the stormy waves head-on, but with more than 10 years of survival experience, he worked hard to find a relatively calm and safe area between the spiritual tides, just to get as close as possible to the falling point of the trash magic weapon, and the moon would come first near the water. At last, after nearly 10 minutes of dumping ended, the garbage boat roared like a beast, turned its direction, and returned home lazily, and the smoke and dust gradually dissipated. The fat dragon finally climbed into the garbage dumping center, and saw Li Yao sitting comfortably on a brand new garbage mountain, looking at him with a smile. Damn it! Fat Long's face trembled, but his heart was quite tangled. The garbage mountain that Li Yao chose was quite ingenious. It was not the largest garbage mountain, nor did it look like the most abundant one. There are dozens of mountains scattered around, containing valuable magic weapons. And the trash bugs are more than the two of them. If you continue to entangle with Li Yao here, you might be profited by other trash fishermen. Other trash bugs have appeared indistinctly all around, and cheers have rang out from many trash mountains. It is someone who has found valuable things. Not to mention, Fei Long heard that Li Yao, a stinky boy, was still a student of the famous second high school affiliated to the Chixiao sect in Fujii City. The Chixiao faction is a well-known big sect in the southern part of the Federation, with powerful strength and many masters. Although Li Yao may not have learned the true story, he can't be dealt with 3 punches and 2 kicks. Otherwise, he would not single-handedly wander through the magic treasure tomb for more than 10 years. He is still alive and kicking, and he has also won the nickname Vulture. But he just left. Where did he put his face? His nose is still embedded in the meat. The heart was tangled, a strong wind passed by, and the fat dragon subconsciously stretched out his hand and took a copy. The start was cold, but it was a fist-sized scrapped crystal brain. Li Yao smiled and said, "Fat dragon, everyone is out to beg for life. Didn't it mean that you robbed you of a starlight-grade crystal brain last time, and you killed your dad? As for the endless dying? Well, I just found it. A Snapdragon 17 crystal brain refined by Qinglongmen is the most advanced model. It can calculate more than 5,000 ideas per second. Even if it burns out, I estimate that it can sell for 3,000 or 4,000 yuan. Just as I honor your Fat Long brother, how about we are even now?" You. Fat Long didn't expect Li Yao to come out like this. He was taken aback, scratching the fat on his face in disbelief. "Hey, look over there! The people of the Wild Wolf Gang are coming soon. They are not like me, a solo traveler. They will definitely wipe out dozens of trash mountains, and they won't even leave you a screw." Li Yao pointed to the west. Fat Long's complexion changed, he squinted his eyes for a long time, and finally made up his mind to pick up Big Brother at Li Yao and squeeze out, "Good boy, you have a set. Let's go, hurry up and sweep the goods." A group of bugs spread out and rushed to the mountain in all directions. "Call." Li Yao let out a long sigh of relief, and sat down in the garbage dump, with big beads of sweat rolling off his forehead, and a smiling face instantly burst into tears. "Fatty man, the Snapdragon-grade crystal brain that I finally found out has made you for nothing. Wait, is my Vulture Li Yao stuff so easy to take? One day you want you to eat mine and vomit it out, and take mine back to me, plus interest. Calculated by loan sharks, let you know why everyone calls me a vulture who wants money without life. No, you must speed up, the gang of Wild Wolf Gang, but it's even more unreasonable than Fat Dragon." Li Yao pulled off the goggles, hung them around his neck, rubbed his hands, his eyes lit up, his lips licked, and he plunged into the freshly baked garbage dump. "Fuck, Li Yao, no wonder they all call you Shadowless Hand. The 11 Mustang GT you changed, soared to 100 yards in 3 seconds. It's almost like changing a car completely. I'm so happy. Shoot. 1 minute 59 seconds. 1 minute 59 seconds. God, am I wrong? A new underground car is born. Promise me, stop racing, and be a car repair technician honestly. No one will look down on you. One day, we will have our own Force shop. Brother Yao, Brother Yao, I beg you, help me, one last time, except you, who can run the entire river road in 1 minute and 59 seconds. I owe scars 300,000 yuan, not today you will die, you will die. Doctor! Doctor! Help him! He is only 23 years old. Amidst the harsh screams, Li Yao jumped up from the floor, drenched in cold sweat. The morning light outside the window was shining, and the light curtain instrument was still playing classic old songs. Like a puppet, the young man was sluggish for half a minute before he gradually broke free from the incomparably real nightmare. This nightmare was his biggest secret, and even the old man hadn't told it. Since he had the memory, he would have the same strange dream every 3 to 5, just like a lingering memory. In the dream, although the same name is Li Yao, he has a completely different life. In a very weird world, he works as a car repair mechanic in a place called a Force Shop. And in the dark night, he is a very powerful car tuner and speed driver in the underground racing circle in that bizarre city. In the night when the engines roar and the adrenaline explodes, he has made a list of items that are jaw-dropping. The record until death is soaring. Although repeating death over and over in a dream is a very painful thing, Li Yao did not resent, but was a little fortunate. If it hadn't been for the dream to give him another life experience, he would never have been in a dangerous grave. Live to this day. It doesn't matter whether this is just a weird nightmare or a tangled memory from a previous life. All kinds of yesterday, such as death yesterday, all kinds of today, such as birth today. No matter who Li Yao was yesterday, Li Yao today is an ordinary middle school student in the Tianyuan realm, Star Federation, and Floating City. Is someone who wants to become a master craftsman. He took a deep breath, cleaned up the room briefly, and finished washing. Just after 6 o'clock, Li Yao put on his school bag and carried the stereo light curtain, and strode out of the house. Today is Monday, and there is a morning meeting in the morning, and you must arrive at school before 7:30. Chaoyang New Village is 30 miles away from the second high school affiliated to the Chixiao school where he is studying. It can be reached by taking underground Crystal Rail Line 3 to Line 7, but it will cost 8 yuan. Reluctant to spend money, Li Yao threw off his long legs, picked up the spirit snake body method taught in the school, and shot it towards the main city. At this time, it was the dawn when the morning sun was rising, the sky was full of light, and the spiritual power was gushing out. Looking from a distance, Floating City is like a behemoth that has awakened, and all the big sects and forces have dispersed their restraints, exuding colorful brilliance. Many cultivators are suspended in midair, taking advantage of the transition of day and night, suffocating the sun and the moon, and the whole body is surrounded by octagonal runes. Some people are surrounded by cranes, fire crows, and meteors. They are magnificent and domineering. A large floating boat drags a long tail flame, slowly moving in the sky. The tail flame is intertwined in the blue sky and white clouds into a huge net. Small and exquisite private shuttles, shuttle between the meshes constantly, issued a sweet whistle. This is the morning of Floating City, the center of federal training. Li Yao shrugged and shrugged like a spring with full strength. Every step can go out more than 20 meters at a very fast speed. However, the posture is very ugly, and some passers-by look sideways, but he does not care and concentrates on cultivating. But in half an hour, he arrived near the school, with white mist enveloping his head, and a layer of white sweat formed on his back. He didn't walk directly into the school gate, but he flashed into a poor street next to the school. A rusty iron sign was hung deep in the alley, with 6 words Lao Wang Second-Hand Store and a line of small words underneath, specializing in all kinds of second-hand magic weapons, concurrently engaged in magic weapons modification, and refined armor. Power leveling spirit beasts, defense formation maintenance, mountain gate opening, and so on. As if knowing that Li Yao would come, a small window opened, revealing a bald head, an old man with wicked eyes. Ha, I lost more than 2,000 cards last night. Zheng Xiao couldn't explain to the old woman when he went back. The god of wealth came to the door. "Little demon, what good stuff did Grandpa Wang bring to you?" The old man smiled wickedly. "Come on, even if you lose all your pants, don't even think about bargaining from me." Li Yao unceremoniously patted the paw stretched out of the old Wang's head and hesitated. Although he felt a little heartache, he still took out the light curtain. Yi handed it over. Although he still wants to study the THRELE or stacking chip technology, after all, real money is more important. It is very expensive to go to private high school. The elixir and auxiliary equipment that must be purchased in order to practice are the same as killing people without seeing blood. No matter what the end of the year, the poor, the rich and the military, are the truth, and the road to the cultivator is to be piled up with white money. Sure enough, it's a good thing. Lao Wang obviously knew the goods. He took a glance at the light curtain device, and his eyes showed a light of approval. He didn't try it out, and he said directly, "One price, 9,005. A warm current surged through Li Yao's heart, and the price was much higher than the market price of second-hand goods. Pharaoh's head let him take advantage of it again. Although this old man did not look like a good person, he was the person who treated him best besides his father in Li Yao's memory. Every time he trades more or less, he always takes advantage of him. He also pays him some rewards every 3 to 5. Philip's work. Without the help of Mr. Wang, after the death of his father, Li Yao might not be able to maintain the high tuition fees of private middle schools. It doesn't take that much, just give 9,000, and the remaining 500 to Grandma Wang, just say you won the poker game and no thanks, who told me to respect the old and love the young so much. I can't bear to watch you kneel and rub your old bones. Where's the clothes board? Let's go, and the morning meeting is about to be done. Just hit my account with the money." Li Yao waved his hand and bounced away. Lao Wang suddenly stopped him. "Wait, little monster." Li Yao stopped and deliberately said, "Wow, old man, don't you think 500 is too little, right?" "Bah, I think back then, the old man was a superb master of magic weapon modification, millions of dollars per minute, and you look like a piece of cake?" The old man wants to tell you that the college entrance examination will be in 100 days, and you guys should be good. Try to get into a good university. Don't think that if you have a magic weapon repair skill, you don't know the sky and the earth. The world is big, you will know when you are admitted to the university. In front of the real craftsman, you are now with this skill. What a fart! The old Wang blew his beard and stared. Li Yao felt warm again and shook his fist hard. "I will definitely be admitted to college, Grandpa Wang." Under the gaze of the Dean of Training, Li Yao stepped forward and rushed into the slowly closed school gate. He breathed a sigh of relief and looked at his watch. It was 7:29, cool. Like all high schools in the Federation, Chixiao No. 2 Middle School also entered the annual Crazy College entrance examination season early. The campus was murderous and resembling a battlefield. As soon as it entered the school gate, a huge light curtain stood in the middle, with a few large letters in the middle. There are still 99 days, 18 hours, 32 minutes, and 57 seconds before the college entrance examination. Every second, the numbers on the light curtain will jump and change, and keep getting smaller, which brings great pressure to the candidates. There are also several slogans on both sides: "As long as you don't die, you will learn from the dead. Raise 1 point and crush 1,000 people." Akasaka Second Middle School dominates the Federation, and will not return it if you don't break the college entrance examination. Admitted to the 9 elite joint schools, became a comprehensionist, and set foot on the pinnacle of life. The impassioned march resounded throughout the campus, and nearly 1,000 students flooded the playground like a tide. Li Yao also speeded up his pace and mixed into the crowd. When he arrived at the playground, the crowd split into 3 groups and became 3 distinct groups. There are about 40 students in the first group, all of them are Yuxuaneng, Yushu is near the wind, domineering and domineering. The school uniforms are all made of silk, tailored to fit, and after the cultivator of cultivators, there is no wind. Baoguang is faintly moving, and it also sets off the master's extraordinary heroism. These people are students in the key class, all of them are talents of cultivation, and they are good seedlings with the strength to attack the 9 elite joint schools. The second group has the largest number of students, with 700 or 800 students. Although the school uniforms they wear are also made of silk, they are not tailor-made and have not been refined by practitioners. They look a little bleak and mediocre. Most of the students in the parallel class are the children of rich families in Floating City, but their qualifications are average, and their strength is mostly based on resources. There are more than 100 people in the third group. They wear low-grade uniforms made of ordinary fabrics. They are loose, fat, and big. They look a bit sloppy, and they don't even have the spirit to bring the master. This is a normal class of students, most of them he is a commoner child from a working family. In the private high school Chixiao No. 2 Middle School, he is like a trash fish. Li Yaisha found his place in the ordinary class queue in a familiar way. As soon as he stood still, he was slapped on the shoulder, and a slightly slick voice sounded, "Little demon, why did you come here today? A big man is coming to our school." Li Yao didn't need to look back to know that this was his best friend Meng Zhang. He looked up on the podium and found that all the top of the school, including the principal, the deputy principal, and the dean of instruction, were all present. This was the usual morning meeting. A rare big scene. What big man is so powerful? Even Zhao Baldu came out to greet him in person. Zhao Baldu is Zhao Shud, the principal of Chixiao No. 2 Middle School. He is an 800-year-old core disciple of the Chixiao school and a high-level cultivator during the Qi refining period. However, it is said that when he was young, he suffered dark injuries while practicing in the monster wasteland of the northwest. Be less involved in managing school affairs. It's Peng Hai, Demon Blade Peng Hai. Meng Zhang was extremely excited, his voice trembling. With this name, Li Yao's heartbeat also picked up a beat in an instant. The demon sword Peng Hai is the biggest legend in the centuries since the establishment of Chixiao No. 2 Middle School. He was born in a slum and showed his dazzling talent for cultivation since he was a child. At the age of 11, he was specially recruited by Chixiao No. 2 Middle School. At the age of 12, he reached 100% of his spiritual root development. He awakened the best spiritual root and embarked on the road of cultivation. At the age of 13, he was admitted to the Dawang Zhanyuan in the 9 elite joint schools. When he graduated at the age of 15, he had already reached the 10th stage of the Qi refining period and became the star of hope of the famous movement Federation. After graduating from the Great Wilderness War Academy, he rejected high-paying employment from a dozen cultivating sects, and resolutely joined the Federation army to compete with millions of monsters in the monster wasteland. In order to defend the Federation, he also used his youth and passion. The corpse mountains and blood of the monster beasts have piled up the terrible name of the demon knife, and finally, at the age of 22, he became one of the youngest cultivators in the foundation building period of the Federation. After retiring from the army, Peng Hai returned to his hometown and joined the Chixiao faction on the condition of an astronomical initial fee. In just 3 years, he has become the head of the new business department of the Chixiao Transportation Group subordinate to the Chixiao faction. Is responsible for the development of new transportation routes in dangerous areas where monsters and beasts are rampant. In addition to a high salary, it is said that it also owns a large number of shares in the Chixiao Transportation Group. Have you heard? Peng Hai just bought an invincible ocean view villa on the edge of Silver Beach, which is said to be worth 70 to 80 million yuan. A tabloid reporter saw that he often took a dozen women back to the villa to drive. The uncovered meeting. Meng Zhang said as he drooled, unabashedly, envy and jealous. From the poor boy in the slum to the high-level management of the martial arts, the wealth is hundreds of millions, the beauty of the car, the mansion with the sea view. This is simply the dream of all slum teenagers. Li Yao and Meng Zhang are no exception. They all aspire to be the next Peng Hai. Coming. Li Yao's watch shook slightly, showing that something was approaching at high speed from the air. When he raised his eyes, a black streamer of lightning came from the eastern horizon. The speed was extremely fast. It was still on the horizon for the last second, in the blink of an eye. Has been suspended quietly over the playground. It is a black shuttle car. This shuttle car is long and slender, like a stretched water drop, almost twice the length of an ordinary shuttle car. The crystal clear exterior cannot see a seam and rivets. It is completely natural from the exterior. I can't see the offensive magic weapon of this shuttle car, but hidden under the black light, it is a heart-stopping dangerous atmosphere. The killing intent seems not to be restricted by space, which makes thousands of middle school students feel suffocated at the same time. It's the Blackbird War Shuttle. The Federation's most advanced armed shuttle car. Its combat power is comparable to that of a cultivator at the peak of the Foundation stage. Controlling the Blackbird War Shuttle, even the monster wasteland can run freely and unscrupulously. Li Yao screamed wildly in his heart. As a magic weapon fan, this Sun Yao fighting shuttle is more attractive to him than Peng Hai himself. And he also knows that the market price of a Sun Yao fighting shuttle with the lowest configuration is nearly 100 million yuan, and ordinary wealthy families cannot afford it. In the next second, thousands of middle school students' chests were loosened at the same time, and the ability to breathe was restored, and the mysterious bird war shuttle in midair had disappeared, replaced by a tall and thin man in black armor with a smile on his face. Handsome man. It's just that in the depths of those dark eyes, there is still light passing by from time to time, like lightning, like a demon knife. As far as his eyes can be seen, even Li Should, the principal of the second middle school, and the always vicious training director Black Face God can't help but turn sideways slightly and dare not look at Peng Hai. Cultivator, really rich, really mighty, and really domineering. Li Yao swallowed his mouth. I heard that this time Peng Hai was specially invited by the school to come back to tutor the students of the key class. Little demon, you know, although our Chixiao No. 2 middle school is a century-old school, the results of the college entrance examination have not been particularly outstanding in recent years. There are not many students in the 9 elite joint school, and even the Chixiao faction has a dull face, so this time Peng Hai was specially invited to come back for special training, hoping to reverse the decline and create greater glories. Meng Jiang's voice is full of jealous. After all, the demon knife Peng Hai personally trained such a good thing, only the students of the key class can enjoy it, and they have no chance for the poor boys of the ordinary class. Li Yao also secretly sighed when he heard this. The 9 elite joint schools are the 9 institutions of higher learning with the deepest heritage, the richest resources and the most masters in the Federation. It is the ultimate dream of thousands of students in the Federation. Ordinary universities do not aim at cultivating cultivators. No matter how talented the students are, no matter how hard they work, plus the chances of encounters, the chance of becoming a cultivator is no more than 1 in 10,000. The 9 elite joint schools have many cultivating schools as the backstage, specifically aiming at cultivating cultivators. As long as they are admitted to the 9 elite joint schools, there is a 30% chance of becoming a cultivator and setting foot on the pinnacle of life. If you want to be a master refiner, you must first become a cultivator, and if you want to become a cultivator, you must first enter the 9 elite joint schools. Li Yao has been struggling with this goal, but his inherent disadvantages are always irreparable, and he seems to be farther and farther away from his dream. Thinking of what was in his mind, Li Yao was rather disappointed. He didn't even hear what was said on the stage. The time of the cultivator is precious, and Peng Hai, the demon sword, didn't get too long, so the principal Zhao should announce the end of the morning meeting. Peng Hai was surrounded by the proud children of the key classes and left, while the students in the parallel class and the ordinary class also vented their energy and walked to the teaching building in 2s and 3s. One day of learning has officially begun. As a senior high school student sprinting for the college entrance examination, the course has been completed a long time ago. The last 100 days are mainly for checking and filling vacancies and various exams. Every Monday morning, there is a very important mock exam. Under the impatience of the teacher, Li Yao took a deep breath and stepped into the examination cabin marked with his student ID. The door was closed and the whole world was silent. Even if there is no guidance from Penghai, I will be admitted to the 9 elite joint school. I'm desperate, who am I afraid of? Li Yao clenched his fist fiercely. D. 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 On a light curtain inside the test compartment, the number was beating, and the countdown was counting down. When the number became 0, a cold voice of Gu Jing Wubo sounded, "The exam begins, the candidates are ready." The tens of thousands of magic charms engraved on the inside of the examination cabin flashed at the same time, and Li Yao only felt that a flower in front of his eyes, the star moving, had appeared in the middle of a red-brown desert. The ground was hot, and the feet seemed to be pricked. The air was so thick that it was almost solidified, like a wet towel wrapped around the body. No matter how hard I could not escape, the occasional hot wind was mixed with a strong smell of blood, and ghosts and wolves were faintly heard from all directions. The 5 senses are so real, as if they are down to earth, in the killing field of Shura. However, Li Yao knew that this was the too illusory realm transformed from the exam cabin. Time was running out. He settled down and galloped in the direction guided by a transparent arrow in the sky. The 50-kilometer long-distance cross-country running is a basic subject of the Federal College entrance examination. In order to select elite young people who are hopeful of becoming cultivators, there are many dangers and traps along the way. Sure enough, when Li Yao passed by a slightly raised dirt bag, the dirt bag suddenly burst, shooting out countless rubble, and from the rubble, a cocky two-headed sand wolf sprang out. This monster beast is 1 round bigger than ordinary wild wolves. It has a high spine and a small deformed head on it. It is a variant of the low-level monster Sanlang, except for being good at hibernating in the sand. In addition, he possesses extremely high intelligence, which makes him an extremely difficult opponent for high school students. But for Li Yao, the vulture who has survived in the tomb of the magic weapon for 18 years, observing every inch of environmental changes has long been an instinct. The camouflage of the two-headed sand wolf is a bit clumsy, and he has long seen it through. Damn it! Before the double-headed sand wolf came out completely, Li Yao ejected his legs, his body shrank into a ball, his shoulders sank, like a violent giant bear, he slammed into it. The timing he chose was very clever. It was the highest point the two-headed sand wolf rushed out. The old power was exhausted, and there was nowhere to borrow, and he couldn't change direction. He hit him. Crack! The two-headed sand wolf is insidious and cunning, but weak in physique. He only likes to attack and is not good at frontal confrontation. He broke his spine with a giant bear lean and bounced back towards the bunker. Li Yao sneered. The snake stepped forward, stretched out his claws like a blade, and slammed the small head on the back of the double-headed sand wolf. Iron Eagle Claws. The head of the wolf shattered in an instant, and the two-headed sand wolf screamed and died so hard that it could no longer die. There was a melodious ding-ding in the air, and it was the exam cabin that was calculating Li Yao's score for this kill. Li Yao was delighted that this set of continuous skills derived from the basic martial arts 13 stances of battle beasts can at least add 10 points to himself. He didn't rush on the way, but dragged the corpse of the two-headed sand wolf out of the sandpit, found a stone with a fairly sharp edge, and broke the monster beast. After a while, the 4 ribs were polished into 4-handed bone blades, and the wolf skin barely pierced into a water bag, filled with wolf blood. In the scorching desert, a sack of wolf blood can save lives. Fully armed, after a little rest, Li Yao continued to move forward, but within an hour, he had survived a black storm and killed 4 low-level monsters, but the exam had just begun. This was just a warm-up. It is the most painful part of every federal candidate. In the sky, the green runes poured down like a rainstorm, forming a problem. Xiaoming is a cultivator in the qi refining stage, with 5,500 crystals of spiritual power, he accidentally hit the word heart eater in one practice, and was swallowed by 48 crystals of spiritual power every second. Xiao Ming's master, after 1 minute and 13 seconds, it was discovered that in order to save him, 55 crystals of spiritual power were injected into his body every second, and after 2 minutes, it was increased to 59 crystals of spiritual power per second, and asked one, how long will it take for Xiao Ming to return to his normal spiritual level? Second, please briefly describe the refining method of the heart eater, as well as the symptoms and treatment steps after being caught by the heart eater. 3. Please tell me which sect was the first to successfully refine the heart eater? List at least 5 suzerains of the sect and briefly describe the reason for the demise of the section. Li Yao patted his cheek lightly. Unexpectedly, it came up with such a difficult, comprehensive question. It combines the knowledge of mathematics, history, pharmacology, battlefield first aid and other disciplines. It is a completely simulated college entrance examination. Concentrating on calmness and thinking carefully, countless accumulated knowledge emerged in his mind. Li Yao concentrated his attention and answered quickly, conquering small questions one by one. Soon, one after another light blue answers written with spiritual thoughts, appears below the green question. The answer is complete. The next question. A cultivator of the right way Ling Shanzong stepped on the flying sword and flew from the east towards a valley at a speed of 247 meters per second, while another cultivator of the evil way of the blood-killing castle stepped on the black cloud. From the east the west is traveling opposite each other at a speed of 239 meters per second. The two are currently 122.5 kilometers apart. Ask how soon they will meet. Assuming that the two have the same level of cultivation, and both use the basic techniques and magic weapons of their respective sects, please combine the characteristics of the Lingshan school and the blood-killing fort to deduce the battle process of the two at least 7 rounds and no less than 500 words. This question is obviously much simpler than the previous one, but when Li Yaozheng was about to answer the question, the breath of monsters and beasts came again in front of him, and the anxious low roar approached. Calculating and answering questions in a storm compares the candidate's physical abilities, martial skills, will, calculation ability and agility of thinking. Only those who are all outstanding in the combination of abilities can stand out in the Federal College entrance examination and embark on the road of cultivation. Li Yao crossed his hands, pulled out 2 Bai Sensen's bone blades, licked his lips, and greeted him Hedon, while the tens of thousands of thoughts in his brain couldn't help rolling, calculating at a high speed. The huge campus is silent, and every classroom is equipped with dozens of examination pods. In the realm of illusion, a famous senior high school student is struggling and fighting frantically to get rid of monsters and questions. Before I knew it, more than 4 hours had passed since the time in the 2 illusory realm, and the exam was nearing its end. Li Yao's body was covered with 70 or 80 wounds, large and small, and the blood was drained in many places, especially a monster beast with a broken tooth stuck in his abdomen, afraid to pull it out, and the bone blade in his hand was almost worn. Convex. Only the pair of big shiny eyes still remained clear, unabashedly bursting with the light of sex. It should be the last question. When the octagonal plumes and glittering runes rolled down from the sky, Li Yao judged by his extensive examination experience that it was the last one of the summary questions worth 100 points. Sure enough, the topic is not long, but the word is very simple. Please summarize the Great Dark Age. Li Yao's eyelashes flicked and his face was a little solemn. The Great Dark Age was the most important period in the development of cultivation civilization. It can even be said that the Great Dark Age divided the classical cultivation period and the modern cultivation period. This is a very classic question, everyone knows, but it is not easy to answer comprehensively. After pondering for a moment, Li Yao's thoughts turned, and his spiritual thoughts flew. Ancient cultivators aimed at immortality and created an incomparably brilliant ancient civilization. They established an upgrade system from refining qi, building foundations to forming pill, primordial infant, to crossing the catastrophe, true immortality and immortality. This road is going forward bravely, constantly opening up the limits of life, towards the endless sea of stars. In the heyday of the ancient civilization, the ancient cultivators opened up one world after another, built an ancient teleportation array that runs through the endless sea of stars, shuttled between the stars and the world at will, and even began to explore the ultimate mystery of time. As the ancient civilization continues to evolve, ancient cultivators have become stronger and longer lived, and the number of strong people has increased. In the early days of ancient civilization, there were only a few hundred Jindan stage cultivators and dozens of Yuanying stage cultivators in the 3,000 worlds. As for the old monsters of the gods and the true monarchs, dozens of them were unheard of. Only one in this world, thousands of years' time, is absolutely rare. But in the late period of the ancient civilization, like a big bang, high-level cultivators multiplied geometrically at that time. There was a saying that there are so many primordial infants like dogs, walking around everywhere. So many high-level cultivators need huge resources to cultivate, and more cultivators have achieved near immortality, and their thirst for resources has reached endless. In the beginning, it was possible to satisfy the greedy high-level cultivators by developing new worlds, but after tens of thousands of years of development, after discovering nearly 5,000 worlds, for a whole 1,000 years, the ancient civilization could no longer discover even a new world. The world is finite, and the demands of the cultivators are infinite. It took the ancient cultivators 1,000 years to understand this truth. It was logical that a civil war broke out immediately in order to compete for limited resources. 3,000 years of civil war has swept across the entire world, and ancient repairs who can call the wind and rain, move mountains and seas to fight each other on each star. The planet is burning, the ancient teleportation array is destroyed, the spar battleship explodes in series, and the high-level cultivation known as immortality people have fallen one after another, and the strong pill formation and the old primordial infant monster have become worthless cannon fodder just like the mortals they once regarded as ants, and will be wiped out under the attack that is enough to destroy the planet. In the late Civil War, more than 70% of the worlds were destroyed, and countless more worlds were cut off from the main world. More than 90% of the high-level cultivators were turned into ashes, and the remaining low-level cultivators were also in the ruins. On one's last legs. War seems to be difficult to maintain, and the dawn of peace faintly appeared until an unknown cultivator genius invented a gadget. The name and sect of this cultivating genius is unverifiable, and his refining process has already passed away with the wind. Modern people call what he createth demon virus. Perhaps his idea is very simple: since there are not enough warriors, why not invent something that will fully enhance the combat effectiveness of spirit beasts and replace the cultivators to fight? After all, the number of spirit beasts is almost infinite. He succeeded. After being catalyzed by the demon god virus, countless gentle spirit beasts have been concocted into terrifying killing tools. The war machine known as Demon Beast is tireless, unhesitating, and endless. In just 10 years, this cultivating genius relied on the army of monsters to unify his vast world. The army of monsters has reached hundreds of millions. The cultivators of the rest of the world have discovered what he has done, and they have also begun to refine his own monster beast. For 100 years, monster beasts have become the main force in the civil war in the realm of cultivation, appearing in every corner of the sea of stars. It's just that none of the cultivators found two things. First, the demon god virus has extremely strong self-replication ability and contagiousness. Secondly, the demon god virus is not only improving the fighting power of the monster beast, it is also subtly improving the intelligence of the monster beast. In the brutal blood battle for hundreds of years, under the catalysis of a huge base, the calculation is calculated in trillions. Among the monster beasts, the monster race with intelligence comparable to humans was born. Finally, on the last day of the 3,000 years of civil war, Ieyasu awakened. As if under the command of a terrifying existence, the monsters in all the worlds in the Sea of Stars rose up to resist their dominance almost at the same time. The cultivators who have been hiding in the gates of the mountain for hundreds of years are not at all a bat-leadest monster. The opponent of the beast, not to mention the monster race who has mastered human cultivation skills. One after another Ling Shan was razed to the ground, and one sect after another was slaughtered by the whole family. For 100 years, the monster race frantically chased every cultivator who slipped through the stars in the sea. In the dark space of the Xingai and the crevices of time and space, I can't worry all day long. 30,000 years since then will be the great dark age of mankind. In the endless darkness, the monster race has established a huge monster beast dynasty, while human beings have become humble slaves and lose their dignity. Lost pride, and also lost the most precious, the power of cultivating qi. 30,000 years, 30,000 years. The ancient civilization that ruled the endless sea of stars was just like a tower of yellow sand, destroyed by stormy waves without leaving any mark. The high-level cultivators of the past are immortal. The descendants of can only rely on the most primitive and powerful fertility to maintain the continuation of the race with a huge number. Until 30,000 years later, at the end of the Great Dark Age, when the monster races struggle for power and gain, and the contradictions are constantly sharp, mankind has a chance to breathe. With the unremitting efforts of countless cultivation geniuses, mankind has launched 3 cultivation revolutions in secret. Established a modern cultivation civilization system that is completely different from the ancient cultivation civilization, and only then re-emerged on the magnificent cultivation road and the road of revival. Under the leadership of the peerless and powerful emperor, mankind has unearthed a large number of relics of ancient civilization and refounded 20 Yuan-Shi sects. After 1,000 years of battles and the prosperity of humanity, mankind has once again become the master of the endless star sea, and modern cultivation. Civilization is also full of vitality. It has been 10,000 years since the end of the Great Dark Age, and it has been 40,000 years since the collapse of ancient civilization. Now, it is the best cultivation century, the 40,000 years of infinite fascination. When Li Yao was thinking about the last paragraph, a countdown to the end of the exam appeared in the sky. He had to give up the idea of continuing to explain the life of the emperor, casually said a few clichés, and ended in a hurry. Almost as soon as the last word came to mind, the whole world collapsed and turned into butterfly-like fragments. Li Yao was forcibly pushed out with a force, a flower in front of him, and his consciousness returned to the classroom. The old examination compartment slowly opened, and Li Yao stepped out, shaking his head, and a little headache. This was a side effect of overdrawing his mind in the illusory realm. My head hurts, just us students in the miscellaneous fish class are still using this kind of garbage. Students in key classes and parallel classes have all been replaced with the latest generation of Chinook test cabins, no matter how overdrawn. There will be no side effects. Meng Zhang complained loudly beside him, and then stabbed his waist in the eye. Little demon, this mock test is so difficult. I probably failed the test again. I must have a meal of bamboo shoots when I go back. Fried meat, how are you? It's normal. Li Yao touched his nose. The difficulty of this exam was indeed a bit high, but his foundation was relatively solid, his mentality was calm enough, and he felt that he had reached the limit. Hurry up and take a look. Meng Zhang leaned over to his exam cabin to operate. The exam cabin is equipped with ultra-high-speed crystal brains, which can calculate the results in real time. The results will come out as soon as the exam is over. Wow, 525 points, so high scores, enough to enter a key university, or average. Excessive modesty is pride, you little demon! Meng Zhang exclaimed. Li Yao glanced at the light curtain, but he sighed inwardly. The score of 525 points is indeed not low. It is barely enough for the scores of several well-known key universities in the Federation, but the next number is very popular. Somewhat dazzling. Spiritual Development Degree, 35%. Lingam is a mysterious organ located in the pineal gland of the forehead of the human brain. It is mysterious because, from an anatomical point of view, this organ does not exist at all. No one has been able to find a genuine one for thousands of years. Spirit root specimen. But in the world of comprehension, this is a real organ, and the most important organ of a comprehensionist. It is the key to communicating human beings with the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, and the spiritual energy of the universe. Only when the spiritual root development reaches 100% and the spiritual root awakening can embark on the road of cultivation. When general universities enroll students, they don't look at the value of spiritual root development, even if it is 1%, it doesn't matter. Anyway, general universities train ordinary people. However, when recruiting students, the 9 elite joint schools that specialize in cultivating comprehensions will multiply the candidates' scores and the spiritual root development as the final score naturally. The higher the spiritual root development, the cheaper it will be. Li Yao's spiritual root development is pitifully low. After more than 500 points are multiplied by 35%, there are only less than 200 points left. The princes of heaven in the key classes generally have more than 60% spiritual root development, which means that they can easily crush Li Yao if they have more than 300 points in the test. What's more, the higher the spiritual root development, the more agile people's thinking, the sharper the 5 senses, and the higher the control over the body. Their grades will not be worse than those of the miscellaneous fish in these ordinary classes. It's not that Li Yao never thought of working hard to improve spiritual root development, but this thing is different from learning. Book knowledge can be learned by rote, physical stamina and martial arts can be practiced frantically, but spiritual root development is based on resources. For example, the princes of heaven in key classes take a variety of natural treasures and strengthening potions every day, and they also purchase Lingam development apparatus at home or go to a special meditation workshop for special training. They spend every month in Lingam. The money for development can range from tens of thousands to tens of millions. Only when the gold mountain and the silver mountain are smashed can the development of the spiritual roots be increased by 1%. And when Li Yao picks up waste from the magic treasure tomb, he can earn up to 10,000 yuan a month. After paying rent, living expenses, and tuition, he has no more than 3 melons and 2 dates left, and he can't fill his belly. Where can I have spare money to develop spiritual roots? All in all, one word: damn poor. Feeling worried, I heard Meng Jiang howling again in a pickling voice. Wow, 691 points. Si Jiexu and Helian Li, the 2 guys, are tied for the mock test again. 1. This time the mock test was held at the same time for the entire senior 3rd grade group. On the light curtain in front of the classroom, information about the top 10 students in the school quickly appeared. Among them, tied for the first place are a beautiful girl who is cold and snowy, and a tall boy who is full of vigor and frightening eyes. Their scores did not move Li Yao, but the spiritual development behind the scores made him spit fire in his eyes with jealousy. Si Jiexu, the spiritual root development rate is 71%, Helian Li, the spiritual root development rate is 72%. Meng Jianggu yelled to himself, Tisk tusk tusk tusk, really worthy of being a man of our Chixiao No. 2 high school, the school flowers and grass, the elite of the dozens of elites in the key class. Look, these 2 guys are not only handsome men, but women. Beautiful, and from a wealthy family. It is said that there have been several cultivators in the family, with good grades and high spiritual root development. This time our school's secret weapon for the college entrance examination. It is said that they were admitted to the 9 elite joint schools. It's a sure thing. The school specially invited Peng Hai, the demon knife, to give them special training. It also has a meaning. It is hoped that they can hit the top 10 in the college entrance examination of Floating City, at least in the city's top 10. While talking, Meng Jiang sighed exaggeratedly, oh, shop around, people are more deadly than people. Everyone is usually a high school student. Now they are all in the same school. But after the college entrance examination, I'm afraid it's about to soar into the sky, stepping into the circle of cultivators, and living a life of drunkenness, decay and decline, and poor boys like us can only be lifetime workers, wage earners, and it's really cool to think about it." After talking for a long time, there was no response. Meng Jiang turned his head to look, but saw Li Yao's eyes straightened, staring at Sigexu's picture, his eyes deep, not knowing what he was thinking about. He quickly tapped on the head of his buddies. "Hey, you kid doesn't look at your boss Jiexu, right? I kindly remind you that this woman is something we can't touch. She and Helian Li are family friends. It is said that the two big families have the meaning of marriage, and Helian Li treats her as well. The ambition must Bedanti look at this kid who is tall and mighty, but he has the smallest mind. He never saw anyone close to Sigexu. Last time, a transfer student came to Sigexu and he didn't know the depth. He said he wanted to pursue Sigexu. 3 bones were interrupted by Helian Li in the class. As for our miscellaneous fish, when Helian Li sneezed, we vomited blood from internal injuries." "Nonsense." Li Yao retracted his gaze, as if he had made some determination. Helian Li didn't mention it, just said that Sigexu put on a cold and dead face all day long. It is almost indifferent. How could I like this? Type 1. Most of the school's resources are leaning towards key classes and parallel classes, and the management of ordinary classes is very relaxed. After the mock test is over, students in ordinary classes will conduct special training for their own shortcomings. The day passes quickly, at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It's going to be over. Let's go together in a while. I just found a pancake stall. The boss's 3 masters are firemen of the Vulcan sect. The boss also indirectly learned the fire cloud palm and concocted the Xian big handprint eggs. The pie is absolutely top-notch. How about my treat today? Meng Jiang patted his chest proudly. No, I have something to do today, or I will invite you tomorrow. Li Yao quickly rushed out of the classroom without waiting for the best friend to answer. He looked right and left for a while, walked around the campus for most of the time, passed through 2 cafeterias, stopped in a small wood at the back of the campus for 10 minutes, then turned back, and tiptoed into a room on the ground floor of the old teaching building. Sundry's room. Gently closing the door, he smelled a scent of orchids in the empty valley. A pair of cold and beautiful eyes, like a clear spring, stared at him impatiently in the dark. Below the eyes, there were the tip of the nose and the thin lips that were tight. If Meng Jiang was here, he would surely make a signature howl of killing pigs. "Oh, you dead little demon, you actually hooked up with Sigexu, the goddess of the second middle school. You are really daring. You are 55 seconds late." Bing Shan Beauty said coldly. "Sorry, it's a bit hard to find here. Did you bring something?" Li Yao muttered a few words and stretched out his dirty paw. Sigexu frowned slightly, evaluating Li Yao's appearance, feeling that she had made a rash choice, hesitated for a moment, or took out a crystal brain from her school bag and handed it over. This crystal brain is very unstable after it is turned on. It crashes every time it runs for less than 3 minutes. I ran to several repair shops and said that the style was too old, and many components in it were discontinued and there was no way to repair it. I heard that you are a senior crystal brain fan, and very good at crystal brain repair. If you can repair it, you can ask what price you want. Money is not a problem. Of course, if you can't repair it, please tell me directly, don't destroy the components inside. Look at it. Jing Neo repair is a broad and profound technology, and Li Yao didn't dare to pack a ticket. He took out a pair of dust-proof gloves from his school bag and put it on. Only then did he solemnly take Jing Neo. It was a little heavy at the beginning, full of the solid feel of the classical crystal brain. This is an antique crystal brain with at least 100 years of history. It uses a semi-mechanical structure and has a triangular button on the spherical surface. Li Yao pressed it lightly, and the crystal brain buzzed and vibrated lightly. It seemed that the mechanical structure in it was operating fast. A few seconds later, it suddenly flew out of Li Yao's palm, suspended in midair, with two holes up and down. Two beams of light were shot out in the middle, one of them condensed into a huge light curtain, and the other turned out 14 shining runes, forming an exquisite virtual rune keyboard. It's a work of art. Li Yao's eyes became extremely gentle. He recognized that this was the tube crystal brain Guangling 7 developed by Tian Qinmen more than 140 years ago. In the history of crystal brain development, the tube crystal brain only gave way to the more advanced chip crystal brain in just a few decades, and the Tianqin gate has only existed for more than 50 years. This sect has succeeded by relying on the original Guangling crystal brain, but it has not kept up with the development of the times. In the era when the chip crystal brain is popular, it is still desperate, and all resources are invested in the research and development of the Guangling 7. Eventually the capital chain broke and bankruptcy was declared. The Guangling Type 7 is also known as the last brilliance of the tube crystal brain, a masterpiece. Li Yao's hands turned into a breeze, lightly beating on the lightwave rune keyboard. His hand speed is not high, but his movements are fluent and unrestrained, as if he was not hitting the keyboard, but he was really plucking a valuable guqin. With his movements, rows of runes appeared on the light curtain. The instructions fell like a torrential rain, and the crystal brain also made very faint abnormal noises that were indistinguishable from ordinary people following the activation of each interface. Li Yao listened, his eyes were very focused, and every movement was extremely precise. After all, the tube-type crystal brain is a magic weapon more than 100 years ago. Compared with the current mainstream chip-type crystal brain, the structure is relatively simple. 2 minutes later, Li Yao initially came to the conclusion, it should be a problem with the heat sink, resulting in an abnormal increase in the internal temperature of the crystal brain during operation. Modern crystal brains are becoming more and more powerful, and the information that needs to be processed also contains more and more spiritual thoughts. For the old crystal brains hundreds of years ago, the burden is too heavy. It's the equivalent of a 150-year-old man, who has to bear 1,000 caddies of weight every day, and it's hard to keep his joints from scrapping for years. This crystal brain is a relic left to me by a close relative. It has a very important commemorative significance to me. As long as it can be repaired, I am willing to pay any price. Sigexu said seriously. Li Yao thought for a while and nodded. The scrapped heatsink is a very common crystal brain failure. It is not a big problem. The reason why you can't repair it after going to several repair shops is mainly because of this crystal brain. The model is very rare, and the technology used is too backward. The heatsink used in it was discontinued 100 years ago, and the heatsink used by modern crystal brains is not compatible at all, but it's okay. There are just a few very rare ones in my collection. For precious antique heatsinks, as long as you try a few more times, even if you scrap a few pieces, you should be able to recover a heatsink suitable for this crystal brain. No nonsense, just make a price. Sigexu heard his overtones. Oh, among the classmates, are you eager to talk about how much money hurts your feelings? Anyway, the problem is not big. I took it back in a hurry and estimated that it would be completed in one night. As for disassembly, inspection, maintenance, cost, and assembly, add the fee and my cost together, and give you a 5% discount, which is 98,500 yuan. Would you like to pay in cash or transfer? Okay. Sigexu squinted her eyes, and a dangerous gleam appeared under her eyes, and the temperature in the utility room seemed to drop 10 degrees. I have money, but it doesn't mean I am willing to let others slaughter me as a fat sheep, understand? Li Yao swallowed very hard, resisting the low pressure, and defended, yes, compared to ordinary crystal brain repairs, the price is a little bit higher. You can buy one for nearly 100,000 yuan. The computing power is comparable to the advanced crystal brain of the peak cultivator during the refining period, but your crystal brain has a history of hundreds of years and is already considered an antique. Of course, it is another price to repair the antique. If nothing else, just say I want it. The few heat sinks used on this crystal brain are the rare collections that I have spent many years of hard work and painstaking efforts to collect. They are all priceless. So, believe me, the price is absolutely fair and fair. Sigexu said nothing, staring at him with deep eyes. The spiritual root development rate exceeds 70%, which brings strong spiritual pressure. Li Yao's heart is tense and almost collapsed. However, thinking of his goal, he bit the bullet and said, if Sigexu thinks it is too expensive, it's okay, just as if I'll repair it for you for free. You can send this crystal brain to some large repair shops in other places, and let them look for the heatsink of the corresponding model slowly. I don't think it will take 3 to 5 months. Can you find 1 or 2 pieces of stock? In this case, the cost should be suppressed below 10,000 yuan. 3 or 5 months. Sigexu snorted. She knew that Li Yao was telling the truth, because the technicians of several repair shops also said the same. According to them, the maintenance of the old crystal brain is not difficult, but the appropriate accessories are difficult. Looking, 3 to 5 months are just estimates. If you are unlucky, it is possible to wait for a year or a half. Presumably, this little rascal also saw this, so he regarded himself as a fat sheep. Forget it, I have to practice. There is no need to entangle these ordinary class guys. Sigexu nodded and said blankly, okay, classmate Li Yao, I can give you 100,000 yuan, but the transaction is only necessary. There are trading rules. At this time tomorrow, I will see a refreshed crystal brain, and you must ensure continuous operation and stable operation. Don't make mistakes every other way. I will not pay any follow-up fees except for 100,000 yuan. Is there a problem? Absolutely no problem. After replacing it with a suitable heatsink, it can be used normally for at least 3 years. During these 3 years, you can continue to search for heatsinks of the same model and replace them regularly in the future. Li Yao said quickly with a smile on his face. That's good. Sigexu nodded. She turned around and left without wanting to entangle this little rascal for a second. Li Yao sat down on the glove box with a cold sweat on his head. It took a long time before he blew his whistle in the dark with relief. It's a success. With 100,000 yuan, he can go to the underground ghost market to buy illegally produced counterfeit strengthening potions, and have the opportunity to develop spiritual roots by a large amount. The counterfeit fortification medicine contains a lot of impurities, and it has strong side effects after taking it, but it is cheap and enough. 100,000 yuan is enough to buy a 3-month dose, so that he will be in the 100 day sprint. Opportunity to refine the spiritual roots and reborn. If you want to be admitted to the 9 elite joint school, this is the only chance. Even if you are the goddess of the 2nd middle school, you can only kill you with 1 shot. I'm really sorry. Li Yajiang Guangling 7 Jing Nao stuffed it into his school bag, pressed his aching temple, with a smile on his face, swaggering, and walked out of the utility room. It is just after school hours, a rare and relaxing moment on campus, with laughter and joy flying on the tree-lined trails. In the sky, many luxurious private shuttles slowly descend, parents who come to pick up their children. There are also many students like Li Yao. Dragging his tired body, walked slowly towards the school gate. Just as he was about to walk out of the school gate, Li Yao suddenly felt tight on his body, and a tall figure stood in front of him. Your name is Li Yao. You were the one who was with Swejia just now. Li Yao's pupils contracted suddenly, his body seemed to be pierced by 10,000 needles, and his heartbeat instantly accelerated, and a chill rushed from his tail vertebra all the way to the Tianling Gai. The pressure brought by this person was so great that he was stared at by a poisonous snake. The mouse couldn't move at all, and it became extremely difficult to swallow a mouthful of saliva. It's Helian Li, the number 1 master of Chixiao number 2 middle school, this time it's over. Li Yao screamed in his heart, wanting to explain, but couldn't even say a word. Helian Li stood casually, holding a crystal brain in his right hand, and was immersed in calculating a word problem. He didn't look at Li Yao with a straight eye, and said casually, "Don't be afraid, of course I know that with your kind of goods, no maybe what happened to Zioxiu, this time, forget it, I'm too lazy to take care of you." He tapped the light screen with his finger and changed to the next question. Helian Li continued, "However, it is the critical moment of the 100 days sprint. Zioxiu and I are both going to hit the floating city college entrance examination No. 1. People, during this period of time, I don't want to have some random garbage to harass Zioxiu and distract her. Do you understand?" Li Yao narrowed his eyes and clenched his teeth. "You said I was rubbish." Helian Li didn't raise his head, and said lightly, "Don't get me wrong, I didn't mean to target you. In my opinion, one of you ordinary class trash fish, one of you'll rubbish." When he finished speaking the last word, he finally raised his head and glanced at Li Yao. At one glance, Li Yao felt as if he was hit with a heavy hammer on the chest. He couldn't help but step back 2 steps and coughed violently. Helian Li snorted coldly, turned and left with a disdain on his face. Li Yao arched his waist and coughed like a big lobster. He coughed up tears. It took him a long time to straighten up, panting, and staring at the direction Helian Li had left. "Damn it! Could it be that this year, as long as you are tall and mighty, Yushu is near the wind, handsome, with sword eyebrows and stars, and you are born into a rich family with a net worth of 8 billion, you also have super talent for cultivation and domineering strength, that's it? Arrogant. After half an hour. It's a loss. This time I really lost it to my grandmother's house. In order to repair Sigxu's crystal brain, I actually offended Helian Li. I knew it. I must increase the price. At least 200,000 yuan is enough. There is also the king, 8, an egg of Helian Li, relying on himself as a rich man, he eats the treasures of heaven and earth every day, and the strengthening potions are used as tap water to drink, and there are masters of meditation to help him grow his soul, the master of martial arts helping him to train his physique. He raised his spiritual root development to more than 70%, so he was so arrogant. Rubbish? I am not rubbish. One day, I will become a real master craftsman and beat you into a pig's head. Put it in the trash can. On the way home, the young man walked alone, gritted his teeth, with an expression of enchantment, and from time to time he kicked the pebbles on the side of the road fiercely. The appearance of Helian Li made him clearly aware of the big gap between himself and the cultivation genius, and also made him understand, I was admitted to the 9 elite joint schools, embarked on the road of cultivation, and became a master refiner. How slim is the chance of realizing this dream? In Li Yao's mind, a scene that he had seen repeatedly in his dreams appeared, which seemed to be a movie scene. It was a young man in a red vest, raised his eyebrows, widened his eyes, and said loudly, "If you don't have a dream, then how is it different from a salted fish?" This scene has always stimulated Li Yao deeply, allowing him to move forward on the path of dreams without fear. Until this moment, he finally remembered that in a dream, after the young man in the red vest said this sentence, the response of others was, "You don't even have shoes, isn't that just a salted fish?" Li Yao stood still and looked at his feet subconsciously. He wears a pair of basic training shoes picked up from the garbage dump. Because of his crazy training, he wears too much. Not only the pattern of the sole is bald, but even the left toe has a big hole, revealing the dirt. X's big toe. He remembered that what Helian Li had just seen on his feet was a pair of the latest training shoes Superstar 9 generations, hand-refined with the toughest monster skins, with extremely high-strength wear-resistant scales attached to the surface. It is said that in the middle of the sole, there is an airbag made from the swim bladder of the deep-sea magic fish, which can not only increase the bounceability, but also protect the leg joints. This pair of shoes alone will sell for tens of thousands. On the battlefield of the college entrance examination where there are thousands of soldiers, there are countless children of the rich and powerful, like Helion Lai, who are wearing Superstar 9 generations and sitting on infinite resources. In this cruel battle, a poor boy who owns nothing, can he fight off these people, stand out, and make his dream come true? Li Yao's heart was particularly confused and his steps were also very heavy. The road ahead seemed to be very long and very long. When night fell, he moved out of the main city at the beginning of the Huadeng. There is a crystal track bridge in front, dedicated to the passage of ultra-high-speed crystal track trains. After passing through the culvert under the bridge and walking 1 mile, it is Chaoyang New Village. This is a suburban area, relatively desolate, and few people come and go. Li Yao was about to pass through the culvert, when a sharp roar suddenly rang in his ears, and his eyes were shining brightly. A crystal rail train was about to pass the bridge. Li Yao stood still suddenly, rubbed his eyes, and looked over the bridge. The moment the light came, he seemed to see a person standing on the bridge. This is a rail bridge exclusively for trains. Ultra-high-speed crystal rail train is one of the top 10 supergiant magic weapon systems of the Federation, known as the heavy weapon of the country. The maximum speed can reach more than 2,000 miles per hour. In order to prevent the destruction of monsters, each crystal rail train they are all equipped with the highest level defensive array, and under high-speed impact, the destructive power is by no means inferior to the full blow of a high-level cultivator. In order to prevent accidents, ultra-high-speed crystal rail trains usually speed on dedicated tracks tens of meters above the ground, and there are closed restrictions around the track. Did this guy climb in? That's right, Li Yao saw clearly that there was indeed an old man standing on the rail bridge. This is a very weird old man with grey hair and awkward appearance, just like the figurine Li Yao once saw in a museum, unearthed tens of thousands of years ago. However, his body glowed with an extremely strong breath, even if it was hundreds of meters apart. Li Yao seemed to be able to hear his strong heartbeat. Bump! 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 It's like a giant hammer, constantly bombarding the iron felt. Compared with his vast sea breath, Helion Li's oppressive power is pitifully weak. The difference between the two is bigger than the difference between the sun and the firefly, and Li Yao still has a feeling that Helion Li's pretense compared with the momentum. This old man didn't take the initiative to urge his breath at all. What he felt was just a trace of fluctuations overflowing from him inadvertently, just the tip of the iceberg. The old man wore a simple and plain cloth robe, as if he came out of the world of classical cultivation 40,000 years ago. Hey, at the critical juncture, Li Yao couldn't care whether the old man was a lunatic or something weird. Seeing the train was about to come, he danced and called out loudly. The old man turned a deaf ear to Li Yao's call and continued to look at the expanding lights ahead. He seemed to be very curious about everything around him, especially the crystal rails paved on the bridge and the crystal rail trains roaring in, which made his face express the joy of a urchin discovering a new toy. Next second, the ultra-high-speed crystal rail train drove by, and the wave sounded like an egg cracked. The mysterious old man was hit and fell apart within a thousandth of a second. Under the surging psychic bombardment, his limbs were broken. The arm instantly vaporized, and even the most basic cells were wiped out, and there was nothing left. Li Yao only saw a flash of red light, and the mysterious old man disappeared completely. He sighed helplessly in his heart. Growing up in the dangerous and terrifying area of the magic treasure tomb, dead people are commonplace, not to mention that he has experienced death countless times in different dreams. Therefore, Li Yao does not have the extreme fear and discomfort of ordinary people. However, after all, it was a fresh life, but disappeared in front of him in such a tragic way, and his heart was somewhat strange. This old man is probably a comprehensionist who has gone crazy. He would do such a strange thing. Li Yao thought to himself. The crystal track train was not disturbed by this small accident. It was still galloping at high speed, gone forever, and quickly disappeared from sight. However, Li Yao knew that the guards on the train must have notified the local police department and even the military of this incident, and a large number of military police would arrive soon. As a garbage bug picking up waste in the magic treasure tomb, his behavior can be said to be walking on the edge of the law. He has always been taboo to deal with the military and police. Li Yao didn't want to get into trouble, tightened his clothes, speeded up his pace, and passed through the culvert. He didn't know that on a level that he could not see, on the crystal rail bridge, where the mysterious old man was standing just now, a transparent crystal human figure that was exactly the same as the mysterious old man appeared. He looked around with some doubts, and finally his eyes lit up and locked. Lived him full of life. The transparent crystal humanoid suddenly burst and turned into thousands of shadowless and invisible crystal fragments, reflecting the bright moonlight, like tens of thousands of colorful butterflies, flapping their wings high, silently submerged into Li Yao's body. It's cold. Li Yao felt that the wind was biting to the bone, as if something whispered in his ear, using very ancient and mysterious language, telling unspeakable horror, and shivering involuntarily. Weird, too weird, he was a bit creepy, tightened his school uniform, and ran all the way. It stands to reason that once a person starts to run, his limbs are moved, and his body should be hot. However, no matter how Li Yao ran, he even drove his speed to the limit, he would vomit when he ran, but the coldness of the cold heart always followed him. Like a tarsal maggot, swallowing him inch by inch. When he stumbled and rushed into the house, his whole person was frozen into a scum, but from the outside, his face was flushed, his head was sweating, the whole body was white mist, and the steam was steaming, indescribably weird. Xiao He, I seem to be sick, help me go to bed, and find some medicinal charms to reduce fever from the medicine box. Li Yao said vaguely, but his eyes turned black. The upper and lower eyelids couldn't help fighting, and before the black wing sword flew, his legs softened, he had collapsed on the ground, snored, and fell asleep completely. As if trapped in a deep swamp, all five senses were deprived, and he continued to, never stop in the absolute darkness. Finally, when he was about to go mad, he had to pray for 9 days and 10 infinite worlds and hundreds of millions of gods and Buddhas to simply give him a break. The whole body loosened, the darkness receded like a tide, and he breathed fresh air again more than he used to. I have breathed in 100 times fresher air. Where is this place? Li Yao looked around in confusion. He knew subconsciously that he was falling into a dangerous nightmare, but unlike the different dreams he had done in the past, it was a dream with a strong classical style. He is standing on an extremely vast large school field, surrounded by numerous towering huge swords and magic treasure bronze statues, and the huge school field covering an area of more than 100 acres is actually flat on a floating hill. Below, there is a black ocean that can't be seen at a glance, with huge waves rolling. The smell of sweat and masculine blood rushed through the nose, almost before Li Yao died. Standing around him were thousands of brawny men with well-developed limbs, muscular muscles, and full-faced fleshy faces, and every brawny man's shoulders were standing around him. They all carried a giant hammer that seemed to weigh 1,000 pounds and worked hard. Boom! 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 Thousands of giant hammers hit the ground together, and the entire floating mountain shook slightly. Immediately, Li Yao was surprised to find that he had also become a sturdy man with a height of 9 feet. Even his appearance had undergone a complete change. With a touch of his hand, his chin was unshaven, and his chin looked like a steel needle. He was also holding a big hammer in his hand, and the rope of the grip was wet with the blood from his torn palm. In front of the large school field, there is a piece that is larger than all giants, and it is not like a human giant spirit god. It stared at the bronze bell with big eyes, and shouted like a thunderstorm, "You 3527 rubbish, has formerly worshipped the sect of the 100 Lianzong and became a low-level handyman of the 100 Lianzong. This is the blessing of your ancestors to accumulate the virtues and cultivate 3 lives. Our 100 Lianzong is the strongest refiner in the 100 Great World sect. The rules are strict, even a small low-level handyman under the sect must spare his life to practice. As a low-level handyman, you have to pick up 3,000 caddies of water every day, chop down 50 trees, and hunt at least 10 spined sharks in the Huiyuanhai below. That is your food. But the most important thing is to practice our 100 hand cloak and chaotic hammer method, the basic exercise of our 100 refining sect. Let me listen, you waste, you have to wield 10,000 hammers every day. Whenever you can blast the floor made with golden essence stone into a hole deep in front of you, you can be promoted to iron handyman and cultivate a more superior technique. Practicing. Practicing. Give me all my life to practice. Oh you Yeming, what are you doing while standing stupidly, why don't you practice? Li Yao hadn't figured out what was going on, but found that all the brawny men were looking at him with extremely compassionate eyes. His heart suddenly became cold, and a fierce whirlwind rushed in front of him. Appeared in front of him, condescending, staring at him viciously. Oh you Yeming, you were talking nonsense when you ate yesterday, saying that you must be a fanatic of the 100 Lian sect master in the future. Why, do you think the cloak and rebellion method is too low level and not suitable for your future sovereign cultivation? Okay, I'll let you see it today. The 108 HAND cloak is so powerful that it's chaotic hammering, wow! The giant spirit spread his hands, the black energy in his hands condensed, and he turned into a giant hammer that was bigger than Li Yao's head. He danced so vigorously and smashed his head over his head. Before Li Yao could react, he felt his ribs. She gave birth to 2 wings and rose into the air, and her head seemed to be as big as 10, and she couldn't help screaming in her heart, "Here, what the is going on?"